Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Homestead from Scratch here. I am Greg Dowd, and I'll let my other guys introduce themselves. We'll go ahead, Logan.
Logan Hyde with Hideaway Homestead.
And John Tejan from Parts Unknown. Weight unknown, parts unknown. The Mask Avenger. The old wrestling lingo. So yeah, absolutely. And if you guys didn't notice, and it's really hard to tell because I just do a really shitty job of it. I'm actually kind of starting to try to grow a beard to fit in with you guys.
Yes.
Oh,
It's
okay.
going to be
I love peer
shabby.
pressure.
Yes, it's going to be pretty shabby. I think I have some Native American in me, and they don't grow much facial hair. So
Yeah, you got that Apache.
yeah, so I'm not.
Grow
real
them a little
happy with that.
patchy.
They're very patchy.
Oh man,
That one almost
Hey.
slipped by me, Logan. Very good, by the way. That's
Mm. I'm just a comical genius. What can I say?
awesome.
Well, tonight I guess we were coming up with some. Well, Logan came in with the win on the kind of the conversations, getting us going for a topic tonight. But talking about what you can do to stack functions on the homestead, and I know this is a part of permaculture principles is to wherever you can figure out how you can have multiple functions in one location. So, um, you know, wherever you are in whatever you're doing, if you can simplify and do multiple functions at one time, it's really going to help you save some time and some of your efforts while you're out there working, growing food and whatever you're doing, raising livestock, however you're doing it. So if you can put multiple functions together, it helps you get more done in a smaller amount of space. If you have smaller space or whatever you're dealing with, whatever situation you're dealing with, it helps out with that. So I don't know what all kind of examples you guys might have of doing some function stacking. I know there's plenty of examples to go through on the homestead.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I don't have a whole lot of examples of what. Well, good evening, Nathaniel.
Yeah, Nathaniel.
Awesome. I don't have a lot of examples of what I actually stack functions because I guess that's not something I do much of because I only have really. I mean, I have cows and chickens, but I don't have a chicken tractor because if you saw my property, I ain't dragging no chicken tractor up and down these hills here. So it's just, it's one of those context specific things. It's like, it just isn't going to really work. I let them free range. They'll go out in the pasture a little bit, but it's kind of far from their coop and they'll clean up some stuff. But I can't really say I did that. Now, one thing I'm thinking of doing, which would be good function stacking, especially since I'm kind of a pasture-based system, is adding more species, right? I'm thinking of adding sheep to go along with the cows. I got to get better fences for that because sheep are a little smaller and they could sneak under the fence. And so I've got to do a better job of fencing before I get them. And it probably won't be till probably next spring. Gives me a year to kind of get everything ready. But that's really the only thing I can think of that, and I could probably think of things. But it's just not something I've focused on trying to do that because I'm kind of limited of what I actually do. So it's awesome, I guess. But yeah, maybe Logan probably has more species of animals than anybody else. So and animals are really the easiest way to stack things, I think.
Yeah. Well, and like you're talking about, John, you're talking about a function stacking from the standpoint of I'm going to function stack my pasture, like with different species of animals and stuff. And you can do it in the reverse way too. You can function stack with the specific species of animals. What can they do? Yeah. I always think of just employing all of my animals, to do something. And like the pigs, I use them to turn over bedding inside of chicken coops and stuff like that. The chickens are also good at that. They're good at pest control. I even, with some of the animals that were a lot smaller, like rabbits, for example, there for a while when it would come down to like just all of my pruning stuff, all that stuff's green. But if you get the bark off of it, it burns really easily and it can be thrown into the pile to make biochar. So I'd a lot of times just to be able to give the rabbits something to do as well, I throw sticks and stuff. No pun intended on that one, the sticks and stuff, but in my rabbit cages, and allow the rabbits to chew all the bark off of it because they love to eat cambium, as long as it's safe species for them, and I do that, and that would allow the sticks to dry out faster, and I could, just throw them. Not that that's a huge thing, but, just throw them for a starter for biochar stuff. And with as many things as I do, I have to function stack on certain things, because if I didn't, I'd never get it all done. And I think it's just a lot of times finding uses for things, upcycling. But I always think of Bill Mollison when I think of function stacking, because, that's really where it comes from. It's from Permaculture Principles. And there's a quote by him. He says, if you're going to put a window in your house, you need to have at least, I think it's 3 reasons why you're putting that window in that spot. And so it really comes down to the design principles as well of like, hey, I'm going to get chickens. Okay, I need to make sure that I've got at least 3 functions or 3 uses for those chickens, or whatever it is you're going to do on the homestead.
Right. And that's, chickens, that's probably the easiest one you can do. I got meat, I got eggs, and I got compost, right? That's just really 3 different functions out of the same animal. That's a really good example. Getting, functions, more than one function, or more than one function out of my pasture, by having multiple species. You're using your prunings off of your trees, for biochar and food and, building projects, right? Those are multiple uses. Well,
even like chickens on deep bedding, I would consider a function stack, because you've got that deep bed material that's composting for you as they're putting down their litter, and then they're turning it up and aerating all of that as they go to. So it's kind of turning into some good composted soil over time. So, I would even consider that like kind of a function stacking if you're keeping chickens.
Well, and I've been making some videos, some of the topics I've made. I made one that is keeping chickens for eggs worth it, as far as monetarily. Just business deal. I did one recently on biochar, making it on a homestead scale, and whether it's really worth your time or whether you should just go buy the bag at Lowe's, right? And spoiler alert, if I make a video about it, the answer at the end is normally going to be, yes, it's worth doing it yourself. Because by the time, if I figure it up and I'm like, it's not worth doing it yourself, unless, of course, I'm doing it and I decide to quit doing it, I'm trying to steer people away from it, probably not going to make a video about it, because there's just so many things that you could do that are not worth it. But the biochar deal, just there's so many things that you can function stack on that. For example, there was one night that I was making biochar, and I put in some rather large pieces. And what you'll get with that is, if you're burning it, you won't get as an efficient like pyrolyzation on the char itself. So you're not going to get a whole lot of char, but what you can do is you can load that thing up, and especially if you can do it right before you go to bed, or if you can do it, every so many hours or whatever, you'll get some, but you're also getting a fire. So back years ago, with pigs, chickens, stuff like that, when people had food scraps, they didn't do the whole just throw the food scraps out to the animals. They made a thing called slop. If you've ever watched any cartoons like Charlotte's Web, you'd see the slop, and what it is they would cook that stuff down to where all the flavors would mix, and it basically just becomes almost like a porridge that you give to the animals. So we had a lot of stuff, and I have an old Dutch oven that I use, and I could just set that over the fire while that's burning and throw in a bunch of stuff that the pigs love and some of the stuff that's not harmful for them, but they may not really be that crazy about eating it. And I can throw all that in there and let it just cook and simmer, break stuff down. They're going to get more nutrition from it. They're going to get more, calories because it's been broke down. They're going to be able to absorb it through their digestive system a little easier. And that's just, another way is thinking of hey, getting rid of waste. Another Bill Mollison quote, I think it was him that said this. I could be wrong on this one, but it was either him or somebody like him that said it. They said it's not waste until it's wasted. So when you're doing something, if you're thinking about your chickens, and you're doing deep litter, it's well, it's not really waste unless you waste it. So, take it out, make compost with it, put it in your garden, make a mobile coop. One of the things I think with chicken tractors, if you really, really wanted to do the prepping a garden with a chicken tractor, if you go and you allow chickens to just sit in a little area and they're in, a little small deal, and you're just going to get rid of all the grass, right? Those chickens will eat everything that is palatable to them first. And then they have a really high instinct, desire, whatever you would call it, neurologically to hey, I need to eat stuff that's, green grass and plants because that's part of my diet and I've got to have it. And so if there's some plants that are slightly toxic or toxic to the chickens, they'll eat that stuff too. I don't think it's in a high enough dosage unless it's something that's really, really harmful to be, really bad for them. But people will wait until all the grass is killed and then they'll move the, tractor on. To me, I think if you're going to do the tractor into you want to prepare garden spaces, you need to have more of a mobile coop where they can go in at night, or you can keep them closed up during the winter and have it in one spot. Make your garden spot, whether it's a 10 by 20 or if it's a small little, 6 by 6 garden bed, whatever it is, and allow those chickens at least a couple of months on it. And if you do that, that's pretty much, those chickens just functioned as mulchers because every bit of bedding that you're going to take in there is going to be to absorb the nitrogen, and it's mulching that area. So you're mulching, you're bedding the chickens, you're absorbing their waste. If you're smart about it and you're making biochar, you'll throw your char in there too, because that quickly reduces on smell, absorbs all that nutrients, gives a place for microbiology to live. And you can just go on and on. I've only said, 5 or 6 things, but there's still 20 you could add on top of that.
It's excellent for if your animals are showing any kind of sign of sickness as well. That biochar can help them recover. Anyway, I got that from watching. I think Joel Salatin says he feeds it to his pigs, and his pigs have recovered from an illness after chopping through some biochar in their feed.
Hey, I've got a question, and it's a function stacking question that I just thought of, and it has to do with biochar. I got a big old brush pile. There's a tree that came down in the storm last summer, and I cut it up, and I just put all the branches and the bigger type of limbs, and it's just been sitting there in a big pile all winter long, and I'm getting ready to burn it. So could I take a metal bucket and put wood in it and just sling it on top of that thing and just let it cook, and I'll kind of get biochar?
A
steel bucket.
5-gallon bucket,
putting a lid,
bucket,
putting a lid on it, and
yeah.
As long as it's starved of oxygen so that it can't combust fully
Right.
and turn to ash. I think you can make charcoal with that.
Yeah. Because
People
I'm
do it
just
all the
like,
time with soup cans in their wood stoves. So yeah, if you basically just made a big soup can with a hole to allow some of the wood gas to, because you will make a bomb if you're not careful. You need to have
gotta let
some
it
way
get
Yeah,
for
that
gases
gas
to
out.
escape.
the
You just
gas
don't want
needs
it
to
to have
escape
oxygen flow. Because
a
like with
little bit.
mine,
Yeah.
I'm doing a uh, a 55-gallon drum and I'm feeding it from the top. It's just got a hole in the top, so everything that's under the fire is getting robbed of oxygen. So if you think about it like that, if you have everything enclosed and you just throw it into that brush pile, I don't see why it wouldn't. I think it'd be really awesome if you documented it. Just at
Well,
least took
because
some pictures of like, hey, here's what I'm using. I poked a hole in it for the wood gas to escape, and then throw it in the fire and let it burn and see what you get on the end product.
yeah, because I mean I got that brush that I'm gonna burn, so I might as well get something out of it other than standing around tending
Hmm.
the fire until it's all burned down, and
Yeah.
just
With the thing that I built, it just took a standard metal trash can and the lid just fitting on it, um, tight or semi tightly or whatever, and just that was good enough because there's like areas that the gases can escape from that, but it's put on upside down inside of the can or inside of the 55-gallon drum that I'm putting it in.
gotcha.
So uh probably if you just put like a weight on top of the lid or
Well,
something
I'm
that
thinking of just digging down to the bottom of the pile and sticking the can in the very bottom on the ground, and then everything's piled up on top of it.
that'd
It'll
probably be fine. Yeah.
burn down. Because I can go to like Tractor Supply. They have those small. It's not a full size trash can. It's probably a half height one with a lid. Um, and
Yeah.
and do that. Might as well start out with a fresh container, because there's stuff that blows down, and Lord, I could cut enough wood if I wanted to make brush piles all day long. But if it works for biochar and I can get a couple pounds of biochar that I can sling on my garden this spring, that's a plus.
After you make it though, you want to make sure that you inoculate it somehow. So either want to like let it sit in like a rainwater catchment you have or something, or
Well, what I'll probably do, since
compost, put it in some compost or
I'll
something.
just I'll just throw some cow manure and some water and just
Hmm.
soak it in that. It'd be just fine. Um,
Yep.
you know, and whatnot.
Another thing you could do, John, is if you've got like a plastic barrel that you could put it in, is
Mhm,
poke some holes in some small holes and maybe put a screen in the bottom of that and
mhm,
just put it in there and then pile the cow manure on top of it and then just let
mhm.
it sit for, a couple of months and let the rainwater pass through it and
Oh,
it'll
I see
wash
what
all of
you're
that
saying.
stuff
Leave it
in there.
outside. Gotcha.
Yeah, and it'll inoculate. Well, you were talking about that, Greg, and I just had an idea. So you did just like a retort system, right? From what I was
Yeah.
understanding. So like this is something I just thought of. If you had a 55-gallon drum, and this may be close to what you're doing, but with John talking about the bucket, what if you just stuck like a bucket on the bottom of your 55-gallon drum with a hole in it, to allow some wood gas to escape, and then poked holes in the 55-gallon drum to get a lot of airflow to get it really hot. And then you threw all your material in around the bucket and then left just the sticks in there. That might be or like, packed everything real tight inside the bucket.
Yeah,
That
you could
might be a
probably do
way
that
to
too.
like a poor man's retort system. I mean, because that's almost kind of what you did, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to starve that inner thing of wood of oxygen, but let it get pretty hot. So it just carbonizes it. So
Yeah. Yeah,
instead of
you
the
got to have it
bucket,
pyrolyzed because I know when I do mine, I do need some pretty dry material to get mine going, and it works. Like a cone pit works by no means am I saying it doesn't. And the 55-gallon drum works, but there are times that it would be nice to just have like, okay, this is the amount of char I'm going to make. I'm going to make a 5-gallon bucket of just these, willow wands or whatever. Pack them in there tightly, throw it in there, and then just, be able to burn something with a little more airflow. Because the more airflow you get, you'll get some really hot fires. And it might be more, I'm not going to say might. It more than likely is more efficient, or else people wouldn't make retort systems. So that might be something that I move to just, if I can do the experiment and say like, hey, it's worth just, getting a 5-gallon bucket at a time, because I only have to burn for, say, a couple, 2 or 3 hours, something like that. It might be worth swapping to that.
How
much wood burn?
Yeah, Nathaniel's asking about wood ash. I get a bunch of wood ash from our wood burner. Been putting wood ash around my trees, blackberries, and all my food plot. We're talking about creating a biochar, but yeah, your ash is a good soil amendment as well. You throw some biochar in with that if you can make any. That biochar holds a lot of extra water inside of it, and basically it becomes a safe haven for all the microbiology that might be. It helps support all that microbiology in the soil because it gives them a habitat. So it's really great for your soil.
Wood ash is really good too. It's just I've heard that you can overdo it a little bit, so I just try to spread it on top of mulch and not go too overboard with it. It's kind of like the same thing of you don't want to put manures up really close to the trunk of a tree or bury it into the soil when it's hot type of deal. But wood ash is great.
Yeah, and I know people do that, but I think it's really important. I mean, it's probably not going to hurt anything, but if you have a better idea of what's in the soil already and do some soil testing, you'll know if you're going to throw it out of balance by because some soils have enough of I don't even know calcium in it, and you may over calcify the soil. It could get really hard like concrete. And so just, if you want to, and it's always not a bad idea. It's not expensive. You can go to your local extension service and get a little box and throw some dirt in it, and they'll send you the results. And it's usually pretty good. Just so you're not over fertilizing one chemical versus another, it'll balance out. But just don't overdo it.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to hurt it, but it might not do what you think it's going to do, I guess is what I'm saying, if you already have enough of that in your soil.
One thing Nathaniel just mentioned is he said it's a mix. It has some char in it. And something that I'll mention too is what John said. Okay, so like when I make biochar is pretty safe. I mean, because it adsorbs, which just means, it's making stuff, glue to the char. It's not absorbing it into itself, but it's, attaching heavy metals, toxins, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff. It's a really good soil balancer. But when we got stuff like ash and everything, if you're taking something like, for example, you take nothing but just a big old handful of chicken poo, and that's all you got in it, that is, an over concentration of something that would not happen in nature. Unless, you're talking about like off the, I can't think of the name of those islands off of Argentina that's got, all the birds just pooping all over it. But that's, an extreme. What's that?
The Galapagos?
No, those are the ones off of Ecuador with the tortoises. These are down south. It's islands that have, they're just basically rock. And birds have come out there for just thousands of years and just pooped all over it. It was a big rush in the early days of America or the United States. I think even really before the United States was a country, that people exported a lot of bird excrement for nitrogen for farms from those islands because there's just so much of it. It was like literally mines. People would go in there and just scoop it out. I hate that I can't remember it. I've been listening to Charles C. Mann's 1493. and it's got a lot of stuff about those islands and a bunch of other history about farming and just, you know, world changes that were made after Columbus came to America and people really started to, you know, immigrate over here. But you take something like bird poop, or you take ash, something that's not going to be in high concentrations in one area. I would say always lean towards the John side of that, of just like, hey, get a soil test, you know, figure out what's going on if you're going to be doing like just one thing. But if you've got like a mixture of stuff, I feel like the more you've got the mixture, then the more you can kind of just lean on the side of like, well, nature will take care of it, you know, because when they made terra preta, and the Native Americans here burnt, you know, fields and stuff. They did it in a there was no measuring anything really. They just, you know, had these practices and stuff. But if you get like really high concentration, if you're just going to do ash, you know, get a soil test. But if you can do like ash and, you know, char, and then you go and you throw that in your chicken coop, and then take the final product from that and put it on your fields above mulch to where it can leach in. That's where I leave a lot of stuff to just like, hey, nature will handle that. Nature can handle anything, but when we really start just doing these concentrates of things that are just so unnatural and so out of whack, if you're going to do that, you've got to, the more sciencey and specific you get on it, the more sciencey and specific you have to be. You can't just say wood ash is good for my trees, and so therefore I'm going to put on all the wood ash I possibly can, if that makes sense.
Because what you're doing is, you know, as opposed to compost or charged biochar or whatever, it's naturally balanced, because that's kind of it's coming from a natural ecosystem of microbes already producing it. When you put wood ash or, you know, chemical fertilizer on there, and I'm not calling wood ash a chemical fertilizer, it's a single element or a combination of certain elements that are going to interact with your soil a certain way. And single elements, it's kind of like, what's better for me to eat oranges or to take a bunch of vitamin C tablets, right? You know, you just, that single element, you might need it, but it's going to be better absorbed if you get the natural source of it rather than the chemical source. Although wood ash is natural, but it's highly concentrated in some of these elements that might throw your system out of balance. I mean, it's not going to hurt 1 year probably, but if you're like every winter you're out there slinging ashes all over your garden because you don't know what to do with your wood ashes, that might not be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
When I lived on the farm in Illinois for my family's farm briefly, you know, we would, you know, burn, you know, we had a wood burning furnace in our farmhouse, and, you know, we just had a lot of ash, and my dad's just go throw it on the garden. It never hurt anything, but it was a big ass, practically acre garden. So it takes a lot of wood ash to cover that much. So yeah, just be aware you might over concentrate, and just, you know, get a soil test just to make sure, you know. And it'd be interesting to do a soil test year to year as you're putting that wood ash on, and see if things, the chemical makeup of your soil changes in that direction. That would be interesting to do. And like I said, it's not that expensive, and it's good research.
All right. So Nathaniel is also saying, we have a firewood business. I have a bunch of sawdust. Can I use that as mulch and or chicken bedding, then mix the sawdust with char and compost as well to make it more balanced?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh, sawdust. Oh man. Look, what, we got 30 minutes left to talk about sawdust, I guess. So there is a wood or excuse me, a wood manufacturer, you know, close to where I live. They just sell planed lumber for cabinet makers and stuff like that. And I go and get sawdust because they have a literal hill of sawdust back behind that building, and it's just, you can get, people get it for their horse barns and stuff. sawdust is one of those things that is like a concentrate, like we were talking about with the wood ash and stuff like that. So now, as far as using it for mulch, I have used it as a mulch from time to time, a lot of times mixed with other things. But if you use just sawdust, it makes amazing mulch, and it'll create some of the most strong mycelial networks you've ever seen, because all the mushroom mycelium is able to grab little tiny chunks. It's like if somebody's, drinking a smoothie versus having to, chew a turnip. It's
Right.
two completely different worlds. You basically liquefied the wood, and those or the mycelium can get in there and get all of those sugars out of that sawdust really, really fast. And so it'll make almost like a concrete, just because the mycelial networks are so strong in the sawdust. Now, I have heard too that it can sometimes be a little problematic because rodents and shrews and stuff like that will funnel through that, which is not really a bad thing as long as you're not putting it up against your trees where they can girdle your trees in the winter. But sawdust as an animal bedding is amazing. Now, it can get a little compact because it is finely ground up. And so, you can, if you get a lot of moisture and everything, it can get a little compact. So if you'll mix it with something else, like maybe your leaves, maybe try to have some other chips in it. But no, it is wonderful. Sawdust, the more sawdust you can have around, the better. And if you got that mixed in with biochar and everything else, I think of just like when I'm making stuff for my soils, whether it's mulch, whether it's a soil amendment, whether it's, just topsoil or potting soil that I'm trying to make to fill raised beds or go around trees, I think of like, how many different things can I put in this? Because the larger the smorgasbord you make of your soil amendments or whatever it is, mulch, whatever it is you're going to use on your garden, the wider variety that you do, the wider variety of microorganisms and beneficial bacteria and stuff you're going to attract to that area. So yeah, sawdust, like just I'll save the other 28 minutes on that, but I just say use it. It is wonderful in all kinds of stuff. It's one of the best things. Sawdust would also be a really good thing to have around. If you can't get coffee grounds, which it should be good, you should be good to get coffee grounds just about anywhere in the country for free. But sawdust is wonderful at hiding smells as well. So if you're doing black soldier fly larvae and you throw in a really big carcass or something, or you process animals and you got stuff for, something nasty you want to throw in there to them, sprinkle some sawdust over that. And you've got, a lot of odor control, which you might mix a little bit of biochar in with that just to help with that. But, it helps hide those smells. I would say, though, if you can get the coffee grounds, it'd probably be best to use that instead, because the black soldier fly larvae can eat that. So it's, a function stacking of this is odor control, bedding, and food for the black soldier fly larvae.
That's a great idea. And there's literally a pallet factory about 2 or 3 miles from my house, which they're cutting lumber 24/7 there. And I know there's got to be I'm gonna have to drive by there probably tomorrow and say, y'all got any sawdust? And they'll probably look at me like, yeah.
Does the Pope wear a pony hat?
Yeah, funny you should ask. I mean, we just have. I'm sure they got a big pile. They may dispose of it already some way, and they might not have any or very little on hand, but chances are they'll have some. So I'm gonna check that out.
Well, speaking of chickens, I mean, that's something that we've got to work on, is getting more chickens. And I think from talking to other people around the area, I was at my friend's place, and they're doing different ways of raising chickens, and they were telling me that the aerial predators have been some of the things taken out there. So, and not just that, just for all the ground predators, if you are running like an electric fence, a tip that I got watching some videos today was to, instead of grounding to the ground to like the lower part of your electric netting, so that if they're holding on to the electric fence and if they're not in contact with the ground, if they start to climb up that fence, they'll get the crap shocked out of them just being on that fence. So I had thought of that, and
yeah,
Mm.
that's
when I
real
first put
common with electric fence, like for pastures and stuff, is to run a ground wire, maybe 6 inches off the ground, and then another wire maybe 6 inches above that. So when the cow kind of sticks her nose down there and starts nibbling on grass, he's going to get a double whammy there, and
yeah,
it's common because you just tie all your, if you have a 5-wire system, 2 of those wires are going to be ground and 3 of those are going to be hot. You just tie them together and ground them. And that works better. Like you said, because depending on what they're standing on, especially if it's really dry, if it's wet, yeah, they're going to go, it's going to go straight to ground. But when it starts drying out, it doesn't
sometimes it
work
might
as
not
well.
create that path to ground. Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing too. If your fence is not getting hot enough, especially in the summer, check your grounding rod and water the ground around that grounding rod, and it'll conduct a whole lot better. It'll get it up there, because if it's just dry, it just doesn't make as good of an earth ground as opposed to when this time of year, after all this rain we've had and snow, and it's like the ground's saturated still, and it's like I'm cranking out at the top of the limit on my fence, but when it dries out in the summertime, you lose 25% of your power generation by just having a bad ground or a dry ground.
I never thought of that. That's a really good idea. Yeah, just water your ground rod. It makes sense, but I had never thought of it. And I'd have been out there being like, "This daggum fence ain't working." Man, would have never thought that the ground rod was the problem.
Yep.
According to Cat Williams, the evil can't get you underneath the water.
The evil can't get you underneath.
That's what I was listening to a Theo Vaughn and Cat Williams interview, and he says, I do all my prayers under the water. The evil can't get you under the water.
Oh my gosh. My favorite part, which I didn't watch the whole thing, I just watched the clips, was how you gonna have 30 pairs of swimming trunks, Joe Rogan, when you ain't ever been in the water. Or however it was he said it. That was just, that was too good. Too good. I've heard Joe Rogan refer to Theo Vaughn as somebody who is from another dimension but just comes to visit us occasionally. And I'm like, that's a pretty good description of that guy. Which I can't make fun of him really, because I sometimes feel like I'm from another dimension visiting people.
Yeah.
But Greg, you were talking about chickens, and and obviously the egg prices have gone way up, because they're killing all the chickens, right?
Yeah.
And I saw something, Joel Salatin was saying something about that. He goes, this just doesn't make sense. If you have a chicken house with 10,000 chickens in it and they get sick, some of them are going to die and some of them aren't. And the ones that aren't are going to be stronger for it.
They're the stronger ones that will help the genetics.
But if you go to the government says you have one sick chicken, you have to kill all 10,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, who's making these rules up, And I know they're trying to stop a contagion from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I understand that, but it doesn't really make sense if
there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be worried about the contagious stuff if they were doing it right. I mean, the fact that you're doing that many chickens on that scale, going to one facility and coming all over the place, and you got one guy that inspects all these houses and has to go around to every house in like, a region, that is what makes it necessary to get rid of all of those. And that's something like on my live stream with Nevermore Farms on Thursday, they were talking about having to get certified to be able to ship chicks and stuff. And it's like they'll put these regulations on these small farmers that they really don't even need to be worried about. Now, I mean, there is a risk, say if they did have some sick birds and they shipped it to somebody. I mean, like we all understand that stuff is something to worry about. But at the same time, it's the models that are really broken in that. And the fact that you've got 10,000 birds and you have one of them get sick and then you got to kill them all. That's a fault of the system itself, the way it's designed. And it's just pure stupidity when you get to that level of it, because it's like, let's, rather than trying to treat all these symptoms, let's treat the disease, the root cause of it.
Right. And that can be done by proper management, because, how many times are they going to have to take bags of salad off the market because of a listeria outbreak out in California? When people that grow their own lettuce, it's unheard of to ever, there's probably not even a documented case unless they knew how it got contaminated. But your average small scale farmer that is doing it properly and not, spraying manure all over, infected manure all over their lettuce fields, it's not going to happen. It almost is physically impossible to happen because they're infecting their own fields with practices that smaller growers don't use. And so it's like, okay, that fixes the problem.
It seems to me there's like some kind of I mean, it's either what do they say, never attribute something to malice when it could be ignorance or whatever.
Right.
But it seems like there's been so many examples. I think there was the American chestnut tree where there was some kind of blight on the American chestnut. They decided to do the same thing. They're like, in order to stop this blight, let's cut everything down. And if you would have left some of those species alive, the next generation may have figured out some type of tolerance to this blight or something like that.
Right.
But since all of them were, a lot of them were destroyed, it, kept that from nature from being able to kind of figure out a path forward for that life to continue. So it seems like a string of these bad decisions, through our past. So there's, lots of these different things.
You mean like having a a research lab in China that has an outbreak of a certain virus, and wouldn't you know, they're still doing the same shit there, and another virus gets out, and it's like, I guess the first time wasn't bad enough that you got to keep doing the same shit over and over again. And and it's amazing, because I don't know if you saw in the news, they're reporting another outbreak from the Wuhan lab, and it's like, okay, we proved it already came from there the first time. Well, why don't you shut the damn thing down and change your policies?
Well, no one should go look up the Bill Gates video where he's talking about if we do a really good job with these vaccines, we can get one of these numbers closer to zero.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't know which viruses y'all are talking about. The only ones that I know of come from bat soup, but it's and that gets into one of the larger causes of the problems. I wish that people would be a little more leery of billionaires, just, a little more like, or at least, I mean, if you see one and you think like, hey, they might be all right, still be skeptical. I mean, because I know there's people that are like, Bill Gates is the best thing since sliced bread. People are like, Elon's the best thing since sliced bread. And it's like, let's remember that these people have enough money that like literally they're never going to be able to spend it and them actually benefit from the money. I mean, it's like you just can't. You get to a point where you have so much money that it's like you buy everything that you want and you still just have money left over. So when you get to some of these levels, like just be leery of this stuff. Don't just go with whatever's being thrown out there. I mean,
it's a real common fallacy that people have, that somebody who is really good at something and is, say like Elon Musk and building rockets. Let's take that for an example. It's like, that's amazing stuff that he's doing. But that does not make him an expert on everything. And people default is like, he's rich, he's smart, so he probably knows everything about everything, and that's just stupid thinking. It's like, no, he's good at doing certain things, but am I gonna, have him, look after my teenage daughter? Probably not, because he's got more kids than, I mean,
well, so like like you're saying, John, like, okay, guy's got some good business sense. I mean, he went in there and he got Twitter, and just he's one of the weirdest people though out there. I mean, you see him talking everything, and I mean, he's he's bringing a sink into Twitter. Let that sink in, and just all the craziness that went down with that. But like, I mean, he knows how to run a company, and from everything that I've heard, which you can't always, you trust only half of what you see and nothing of what you hear. But a lot of people like working for SpaceX and stuff. Like you said, I mean, there's probably some stuff that he can do that would help with cutting budgets and stuff like that. But you know what? One person being in charge of that, you can't tell me that he ain't going to cut something that might actually be useful. Even though I think we all kind of agree that the government's useless in every way. But like, as far as the system that we've got that's halfway working sometimes, like, on business days, sometimes we might cut something that might actually have a negative effect. And that's the thing about all these people that are in these big systems and stuff. They never take accountability for anything. They'll say that, they can always pass the buck on to somebody else. And that's why I really like focusing on all the homestead and stuff. And I think that's why there's just the biggest movement, is because people are getting to the point where they're sick of this stuff and they want to get back to a point to where they're more in control of their own lives. And homestead is one of the great. Okay, the egg deal, we haven't even noticed. We've got more eggs than we know what to do with it. My neighbor called me up, the one that gave me all the hay, and he was wanting to buy some eggs. I told him, I'll give you eggs. You gave me enough hay to feed my sheep all winter long. Like, you can just have them. And we don't, we're not affected by the egg prices. We don't care. We don't care. I care, I don't want people to be hungry, and I don't want food prices to skyrocket to where it hurts our economy more than it's already been damaged. But, at the same time, it's really nice to be able to take charge with those things and not have to worry about it. And that's coming back to our topic, the function stacking. We've got to start thinking like that again, because if we don't, we can't live and be more independent like our ancestors were, because that's how they had to do stuff. Even when you've got people that specialize in certain trades and you live in larger societies, if you want to live in a more free society, you've got to have various skills. You've got to utilize everything. You've got to reduce waste. You've got to do all the things. All the things have to be done by you. You have to take charge, and you have to take risk. Without that, you don't have freedom.
Right.
Just the more people that have personal responsibility and are taking care of as much of their own needs as possible, you're going to have a much more resilient society as a whole.
Yeah. And, because there's people right now, and I kind of think about it sometimes. It's like, what did people do before there were grocery stores and Home Depots to buy shit at, because, You can go to Home Depot and buy just about anything and fix anything on your farm, or you can, small example, and I may have done something different. I was cleaning out the refrigerator and got one of those, drawers that you put your lunch meat, your cheese in, or your vegetables or whatever. I pulled it out, and one of the little rollers on there broke off. And it's like, well, I could get the manual out. It's probably like a $2 part and just order one. Or I could take some epoxy, take it apart, glue it back together, and sling it in there, and done. But yeah, people, the convenience of having a grocery store and a Home Depot. Well, I'll just go there and buy it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go there and buy it. What was it like when you couldn't go there? I mean, that's one of the things about the old school farmers. And I've met some of them before, and most of them, well, hell, all of them are probably dead now. I mean, they knew calculus, trigonometry, geometry. They had to design their own machinery. They had to fix everything themselves. They were really smart. You had to be. You couldn't, and they used to teach those things in school, and they taught you how to use them. It's like, but now it's like, why am I learning this?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody on the farm knew exactly how you had to build, use machining tools and everything else, and design your own stuff, which today is like literally nobody does that. All design's done overseas by some guy you're paying, $5 an hour on a computer to design something, well, send me the specs and I'll build it myself or whatever. But yeah, it's like they were jack of all trades. And the thing is, and it's still this way, but different, because the government is subsidizing farmers crazily, which is why we have a lot of the problems, by the way, it's subsidies. The thing is farming was what, was the main business of the family. But everybody, it's cool to call them side hustles now, but they all did that. My mom did that when they lived on she used to sell eggs, I mean, you'd pick up an odd job because you knew how to do something, or you needed the money and you figured out how to do it. My grandfather, that was the story he always tells during the Depression. Nobody had a job. He was, had a young family and he was out of a job, and it was like, there was an ad for a washing machine repairman, and he just showed up and he goes, you had to fix washing machines? Yeah. He'd never seen one before in his life, and it's like, but he knew how to work on stuff, so he could figure it out, he just bullshitted his way through there, and he ended up becoming a union electrician, and, going on the rest of his life that way. But yeah, that's what homesteading at its very basic is, taking care and learning all of those things so you can fix your own shit and feed yourself and protect yourself without going to Walmart or, Home Depot. I mean, just to use a modern example, try to do that sometimes. Just go, okay, pretend you can't go to Home Depot this weekend. Can you fix any of the shit on your farm or your homestead? Go figure it out. If you don't have the skills, learn them to fix your own stuff. That's hugely valuable. If you're trying to, get away from the government and not depend on them, that's the best way to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime you can pick up a new skill, find a buddy that can teach you, and over
sure,
case of beer,
and there's still people out there that are willing to, show you how to do it,
Yeah.
Or maybe you just need to hire them and they'll show you how to do it, and then you won't ever have to hire them again. I've done that before. It's like, oh, is that all? Is that all you had to do? Don't need you anymore. Sorry about
Trying to
that.
put me out of business, John.
Yeah, I can fix my own fence now. I don't have to call somebody to come fix it. I know how to string barbed wire because I shredded my hands trying to learn it myself, but I finally figured it out.
I think one of the worst things you can do for a kid is just give them money.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't get your kids Christmas presents. I'm not saying don't buy them birthday presents. Before anybody starts calling me a big meanie or whatever, I'm not saying that you can't give your children things, but I know that from the time I was 16 years old, where I could legally work, which is just insane in this country that we have. I mean, I know why we have child labor laws. I know there's people that abuse their children, but kids are able to work from a very early age, and they should work, and they should learn about earning money and everything. And I kept chickens. That was my hobby, and I didn't have a whole lot of money. The jobs I was working at 16 years old were minimum wage jobs. And so when I'd go to build a chicken coop, I'd go and I'd get reclaimed lumber. I learned just how hard it is to beat nails out of old oak, 2x4s. It is insanely hard. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes you're not able to get them out. And you realize, you just need to cut the end off of it and make your chicken coop smaller. But, I remember if I had not had to scavenge for materials and do all that stuff, I wouldn't have the skills that I have today. One thing, hinges a lot of times for doors, hinges are pretty hard to manufacture when it comes to wood, right? You got to, there's a good bit of work that would go into manufacturing a hinge. You can do it, but, you look at other stuff like just having lids on chicken coops that lift off, just to save on hardware. When I needed latches, I never bought a latch. I had some that I had found that I, scavenged for, but I never bought a latch because I can make a wood latch with a screw. And every single chicken coop I had a wood latch. Had I not had to have gone and been inventive with all that stuff, I wouldn't have learned to make all those things out of wood to where I don't have to go to the store. Because there's times where it's like, hey, I need this piece. It's like, is it worth running to the hardware store, or can I do it here? Just like John was talking about with the refrigerator. But we are, and I love Amazon and everything. I hope Amazon never goes away because there's so many conveniences with that. But at the same time, it's, Amazon is not going to be here in 2 days anymore if you got Prime. They used to do that. If they didn't get it to you in 2 days, you got a refund on it. But now all that's changed. And you've got to be able to just improvise from time to time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, because, if you grow up, and you're not just giving money and you want to do things and you have to be poor, then you become more inventive, and rather than, just handing stuff to people, because I feel like everything is just handed to us far, far too often. Just Here you go.
Right. And, and that was the whole, although I never received an allowance when I was growing up. Right. And and there's nothing wrong with that because I have a nephew who got an allowance. I don't know, $5 a week or something. I don't know what it was. That kid, and this is kind of a natural thing. That wasn't necessarily taught. Well, it was taught in a way, but it's like, to get him to spend that money, you'd practically have to hold a gun to his head. He held on to every penny he got. He was the cheapest. But the thing is, as a parent, and I'm not one, but I've seen other people do it properly. Let's put it that way. Like, here's an allowance, and then when you're out and about and they want something, it's like, that's what your allowance is for. I ain't buying you ice cream. I'm not buying you that. I'm not buying you a toy.
Yeah,
that's what you get allowance for. And you done blow it on candy, So guess what? You ain't getting it. And that teaches them to go, okay, if I really want something, I'm going to have to save my allowance and not blow it as soon as you get it, right?
Or figure out how to make more money. Yeah.
Well, and that's true. And that's true too. And if you have the proper relationship with money,
Mhm.
naturally that light bulb is going to go off in your head naturally, and you won't have to, you beat the kid to go get a job or something, or as parents do nowadays, they just go and interview for a job for their kid, and they don't even, they don't even know how to interview anymore. It's like the parents
Yep.
go with them to the job interview.
Well, a lot of that I think is how a lot of the kids are getting raised nowadays, and where it is like none of the kids have like we're talking about a little earlier, some kind of personal responsibility, some kind of responsibilities in general, and you know, like you're saying, figuring out some way that they can make the money, or
Mhm.
if they have the money, they got to spend it wisely or whatever. And a lot of kids are not being taught those lessons,
Right.
and kind of
And
told that there's, you know, you're special, and let's make sure you're never uncomfortable, and everybody gets the trophy and all that kind of stuff. So, which
and
is breeding a lot of people that don't have a lot of skills that can help them make it through life.
well, and on the other end of the extreme there, if the kid is grown up with the improper signals about material things, and the
Mhm.
parents don't give him any money, and they don't have any money, and they can't, and they don't want to work, they just, that's how kids get in trouble and end up in jail selling drugs and getting into crime. It's like, I want that. Well, you can't have it. Well, yeah, I can, because I'm gonna go, do some work for this guy and make
Yeah,
some money. And I make a lot of money doing that too, And that's the hardest thing to see is when kids,
yeah.
just say the hell with it, and I'm gonna do whatever. Illegally, not legally.
Well, all right, guys, we're up on an hour. Do you guys want to go around the horn and let people know where folks can find you and follow you?
Sure, I'll kick it off. John Tejan, DJ Cattle Company. You can find me on X under Soul Survivor 78.
So
Logan,
go ahead.
go ahead. Tell people where people
All
can
right.
find you.
So I'll get a couple of my plugs in here while we're closing out. You can find me on YouTube at Hideaway Homestead, and come on by and join us again Thursday. I'll be doing another live with Nevermore Farms again. They've updated their website and they have a donation button now. Go and check them out if you're looking for any soaps or healing cream, stuff like that. They will be doing hatching eggs in the future. So go check them out. And if you're interested in the kind of stuff we do on the channel, the 8th of March, we have a mushroom workshop going on in Birmingham, Alabama. I'll put the link in for that in the show, in the description. I'll pass that over to Greg there. If you're close in there and you want to come by, and learn how to grow mushrooms, you can come by and check us out there. You can also email me with any questions at hideawayhomestead@gmail.com.
Cool.
All right. And Nathaniel, thank you for hanging out. Appreciate you being in the chat room.
Thanks, Nathaniel.
And I'm Greg Dowd. This is the Tinker Tribe channel, and I do some interview podcasts with guests, and I've been documenting our build that Logan has been helping me out with. We're building a cabin for people to come down and stay for a recreational property. So yeah, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, check out the channel. And we do these talks every Sunday night. We get together and do these talks with John and Logan. So if you like this stuff, subscribe and leave a like and leave a comment on the video if you guys like what we're talking about, or if you got some suggestion or something that you'd like to hear us talking about. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week, and thanks for coming by.